Shalom. So today we're going to talk about the month of Abib, deception. A lot of people believe that the new year starts with Abib, but when you do ask them, what is Abib? Show me what it is. There's nothing to show. All you hear is the month of Abib, the month of what is Abib, right? So to think that the new year starts with the plans, as you know, one of the things that a lot of Hebrews would like to say is, okay, what makes January 1st the new year? The first thing they're looking at is the vegetation, right? To say, oh, everything is green and new. That doesn't mark the new year. What happens when you don't have the water season in the new year? What happens when there is drought? The vegetation is going to look green and beautiful just the same? No. So that is not something consistent. But we're still going to explore Abib and get into the details. So we're going to ask ourselves 4 questions. What is Abib? Is there consistency with Abib? Meaning, is it consistent? Like I said, what if there's a drought? What if there's a flood? Like Noah, right? And other aspects. Is it consistent? What is a month? That's the next thing. Today, people will say January, February, March, but what is it that you can relate to say that is January? For example, you can look at this and you say, this is a phone. What can you look at and say that is January, that is February? For example, a person crash landed on an island, no internet, no phone, no computers, nothing. Woke up out of an unconscious state a few months after or a few weeks. What is that person going to look at to say, okay, I'm in this month, I'm in August, I'm in January, I'm in May? What? There's nothing but the imagination there. It's a belief absent reality that there's something called August, something called September. The next thing we're going to look at is what is appointed, what is consistent in the marking of the beginning of the year. So let us explore these 4 questions. Alright, so I'll be using my phone because it's hard to turn the pages of the Bible while standing, holding it in the hand. Alright, so we're going to look at Abib. It says age 24, Abib, meaning to be tender, green, that is a young ear of grain, right? So you're looking at the barley and it says tender or green or young ear. Now let us see how truthful this information is or how concrete it is, right? Because some of the times we just accept anything, especially if we are ignorant to the reality of it. So let us see what is the purpose of this barley grain, right? So this is Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 10. It says, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye become into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest. Right? So a sheaf would be like a handful, right? You get your handful, and remember, you have the wave sheaf and you have the heave offering. So the heaving is like this. Toward the Most High, back to you. Wave is from side to side. So the sheaf would be like a handful, right? Now let us continue reading. It says, and he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you, and the morrow after the Sabbath the priest shall wave it. So you'd have the 15th day of the month, right? Which would be a Sabbath, which would be the 7th day of the week. And after that would be the first day of the week of unleavened bread. It says, and he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you, and the morrow after the Sabbath the priest shall wave it. And he shall offer that day when he wave the sheaf and he lamb without blemish for of the first year for a burnt offering unto the Lord. And the meat offering thereof shall be 2 deals of fine flour mingled with oil. So remember, the flour comes from what? The barley. So this would be the barley flour, right? Now, remember, abib, it says green or young ears. Do you grind the barley when it is in the green or tender or young, or when it's fully ready, right? You have to get the moist out of it, so it has to be dried for it to be grounded into flour. So here when it says the abib is the green or the young ears, that is not correct. So if you were to observe your plant in that stage and identify with the beginning of your month, guess what? You would be in problem. Let us go to the book of Exodus chapter 9 and verse 31. It says, and the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, was in the abib, right? And the flax was bald, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. So, what is this telling you about the barley and the wheat? One was ready and one was not ready. So, this was a few days before the Passover, let's say. We know that it was before the 14th day of the first month, right? So, if this barley is ready in the first month of the year, when would it have to be planted for it to be ready at this time? How long does it take to be ready? It takes between 90 to 120 days, because at least 3 months, 90 days, round about there, right? It is when it reaches maturity. And then, after you cut it, after you harvest it, you still have to let it dry a little bit, right? Because you want it to be dry for you to can turn it into flour. So it's between 90 to 120 days. So that means if this was ready at the first month of the year, it would have been planted at the end of the fall period, during the fall period. Then right throughout the winter, it would be there growing. And remember, you're dealing with the climate in the land of Canaan, which is Israel. Now, let us get some scriptures. Let us get some scriptures on this information. Let us go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and verse 15. It says, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering. When did you bring the offering? Here, right? It says, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf offering. So the Sabbath was here. This is the morrow after. This is the day after, right? It says, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. 7 Sabbaths. This is a biblical week. 6 work days and 1 rest day. So 6 work day, the day after the Sabbath, the 15th, 6 days, and the 7th day of rest. That's a week. Another 6 days, and the day of rest. That's a week. So it's gonna be 7 weeks, right? 7 weeks. Then it says, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. So after the 7th Sabbath, the day after that, it says, ye number 50 days. So 7 Sabbaths would be how many days? What you'll be calculating is 7 times 7, 49. That's what you'll be doing. But let's be more realistic about it. 7 Sabbaths, 6 work days, and the rest day here, right? But guess what? For you to go to the next month, you'd still have to pass your new moon day. So this 7 Sabbath is still more than 49 days. It's just that you're not literally counting the new moon days because you need 7 Sabbaths, right? So you're gonna have to have the new moon day for the second month, the third month, and the fourth month. So this is gonna be at least 52 days total. But you're only counting your Sabbaths, your weeks, right? Now it says, even unto the morrow after the seventh Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. This time you're gonna count your new moon days. So you're not just doing weeks, you're doing your new moon days as well, right? You do not count the new moon day in a week because it doesn't carry 6 work days before it. This is why it's a total day by itself. It's separate. You cannot count this and get a week because the days before this would be of the previous month. You cannot merge the days of 2 separate months. You can do it with your imagination, but not in reality, right? So if you have, let's say, 50 days and another 50 days, you're looking at least 100 days, right? So the barley takes between 90 to 120 days to be ready, right? So if you plant your barley at the beginning of the spring, for example, in the first month of the year, how many months would it take for it to be ready? Let us go to the book of John, chapter 4, and verse 35. It says, say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. When do you harvest? Harvest is summertime, right? So from the first month, it would take another 3 months at least for you to harvest your first crops. In the summertime, for you to harvest in spring, it means you'd have to be planting from the last season. So you plant during the fall, and this is why you see even like farmers in Europe, what do they do during the winter? With all the snow, they gather the dung from the animals, wherever they can get them, and they put it in the snow, and then when the spring comes, the sun just melts everything, and it does what? It fertilizes the land. It's the same thing that we do here. We take the cow dung, the goat, the donkeys, whatever we have, we bag them up, right? And then when the water season comes, we put them around our plants so it melts and fattens the plant, right? This I already videoed, but I'm not ready to put it together because I want to do it for another video that I'm going to make about seasons, because that's one thing a lot of us don't understand. We talk about year, months, day, but we never talk about seasons. Because if you don't do certain things in the right season, you're going to have a problem, right? So this is why you see, even dealing with barley, I don't believe in this barley thing, but at that time, you know why I could agree with it? Is because the priests back then, they had lands in the country area where they could do their farming. So they would be on point with knowing that, okay, we planted this time, we know that, okay, this time is going to be ready so that we can have this feast. Today, most of the people who are teaching this, they don't know anything about farming apart from what they read or look at videos. But they're not physically doing these things to know by experience. They're not taking their congregation on some field trip to say, okay, hey, you know what we're going to do next Sabbath? We're going to go to some black-owned farms and observe and spend a day like a field trip. You understand? They don't do these things so you can get more experience even by looking. So you can be more aware, right? So now that we understand about the barley harvest and that it is used for the flour and you need it for such and such, right? And the period of time that it actually takes to be ready. So now let us go and now let us question to see the consistency of it. And this is why I said I don't believe in this abib thing. The Most High was never speaking to the children of Israel using abib. Then when they go to the next captivity, the Most High says Nisan. Then when they go to the next captivity, he said Santikos. No. If he's telling you, don't do after the nations in the land wherein you go, why would he himself be doing it? He never gave us names of months because he never wants us to go into idolatry. Because we are easy to go off. Once we start doing certain things, then we want to go to see what else we can do. That's the curiosity of the mind. What else can we do? What Right, next thing you know, you start idealizing these things. You start worshiping, you start bowing down to them. The months for the Hebrews were always ordinal numbers. So he's just going to say the first month, the second month, the third month, and so forth. Because what? It goes by a location or a position in the sky. So back to the question that if you were to crash land on an island, you know what you could look at? The position of the sun, the way it's traveling in its course, and you can tell. That is one thing. But the next thing is the moon. You get seasons from when the sun passing through these different constellations. So now we're gonna get into is there consistency with Abib? What are the questions that you would have to ask yourself? Let us explore. Put yourself on the boat with Noah. Matter of fact, let us get the scriptures. This is Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11. So let us write it here. So he says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, right? So he's giving you a date, and it's the 600th year of Noah's life. It doesn't mean that it was the 600th year in general, right? So I'm just going to put it here. Now let us go to chapter 8 and verse 13. It says, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month. So here we have 2 dates, right? Now what I want you to do, put yourself in this ark with Noah. From the second month of the year, the earth being flooded, right? How would you look at Abib and find and confirm that you were at the beginning of the year? Where would you find barley to even look at to see whether there's an Abib or not? So this is why I said it is inconsistent. These things only happen after captivity, and these they insert. The Most High does not speak to us using names of months, the very thing he told us not to follow. That is like saying if the Most High should inspire us today to write again, he's going to say, okay, in the month of August, in the month of December. No. It's always about a position or a location in the sky, so it's always ordinal numbers, right? So this question lets you know that this is not of the Most High. The next thing is that if you are in the land of Canaan with the 7 years famine, how would you look at the barley to know the beginning of the year if it was solely dependent on the barley harvesting? 7 years famine, how would you know when was the beginning if that was what you had to rely on? It is not consistent. The next thing again, we had a law that after 3 years, you don't work the land. It has to rest. And after another 3 years is the same. So there's a rest at the seventh year, right? Now, if you go on for the seventh and the seventh all the way up to the 49th year, which is the Jubilee, what happens? You don't work the land. Everything was restored back to the original owner and so forth. So you had to do 2 years without farming. How would you know when is the first month of the year? So this Abib doctrine is very inconsistent. And even if there was some truth to it, guess what? You would have to be in Palestine, you'd have to be in the land of Canaan, the region there, to see when the barley is ready there. How would we here in the West know when the barley is in its Abib in Palestine, in Canaan, in Israel? We would have to be Googling every time. That's very inconsistent, right? Now, the next question is, what is a month? Ready? Just a few minutes. All right, so we're going to understand more about the moon. So if you look at H3394 Iraq, what you'll see is that it's just talking about the literal moon. For example, you can say this is a marker, the literal marker, right? Now it's the same thing with the moon. The object itself is this word. It's like saying if there was an object to represent January, you could say, look at this and say, this is called January, the object. But there's no object there. It's just imaginations, right? So this is the literal object, the moon itself. H3391, this is talking about the lunation. So, like you say, the first quarter, the third quarter, the invisible moon, the full moon. This is what it's talking about. And you see that when you go to the book of Revelations, chapter 22 and verse 2, it says, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations, the different lunation, right? So, certain things you do when the moon is like this, certain things you do when the moon is like that, and so forth, right? So you're dealing with the H3391 of the moon. The next thing is the shape of the moon, the H7720. You're dealing with the shape of the moon. So, you see those pendants, those round objects, for example, round. Or it can be like the little crescent. You're dealing with the shape, right? This is here. Now, H3842, you're dealing with the actual light. of the moon, right? The whiteness. Now, H2320, Karash, you hear everyone talk about it. What is Karash? It is when talking about the moon in the context of a period of time. This is what, matter of fact, let's go to 1 Samuel's chapter 20 and verse 24, right? It says, so David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the Kadash. So he's not talking about the object itself, right? When the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. It says, verse 27, and it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the what? Kadash, the second day of the month. So when you're dealing with moon in the context of a period of time, it is called a Kadash. For example, August. If you want to say the 15th of August, it's the same as you'd say the 15th of the Kadash. But we know that August has no relation to the moon. So you see how things different in the Hebrew culture? So when you're dealing with the context of the moon, this is the word. And you go anywhere in the scriptures, once you're looking for a date in time, you will always see this. The 15th day of the month, whatever date of the month, this is the word you will always see, because the moon and the month is the same thing. It's just depending on the context of how you're talking about it. Right? Because if you're saying, oh, it's full moon, it's so bright, it's so pretty, you're not going to say the Kadash. What you're going to say is the H3842. So you see, you can speak about the moon in different ways. You have a time where you say, oh, the moon is oval shape, or oh, it's fully round. You're dealing with what? The H7720. So you're speaking about the moon in so many different contexts. So now that we know that the moon has a relation to the date, let us go to the book of Psalms 104 and verse 19. It says, he appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knoweth his going down. So we are seeing here the true appointment for the moon is for seasons, right? And it says the sun knoweth is going down. Let us go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1 and verse 5. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. So it's talking about a what? A cycle, circular, a circuit, the going around, right? Same place where it starts, it goes all the way back around till it reaches back the same position. So it's always about a position or a location in the sky. So if you want to look for the beginning of the year, you have to look for a position in the sky. And what is used to be a sign for that position? The lights. Because if there are no lights there, you cannot see the object. If the object itself is not light, just like we know there are so many objects up there that we cannot see, but it doesn't mean that they're not there, right? But the only ones we can use to be a marker for something is the one with lights, right? Now let us get some more on that. Let us go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 43 and verse 6. It says, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. Right? A sign, because you use a different lunation of the moon, so you can know certain things. Right? And when you're dealing with the moon, just as they would want to equate in this culture that Monday and moon day is the same thing. You know what is so wrong with that? It would mean that there would be a problem planting every Monday if it was the day of the moon. The seventh day is the day of the moon. You know what happens every seventh day? You either see a full moon, a half moon, a black moon, a half moon again, and a full moon. Those are the days of the moon. Those are the seventh day. And guess what? You do not plant on those days. Again, ask your leaders to take you to a field trip, and you guys can learn from some of the farmers, learn some simple things, right? But you have a lot of people teaching who don't have any experience in agriculture, who do not plant with the moon, with the sun, because they think it's pagan, right? So it says, he made the moon also to serve in her seasons for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. For from the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. The month is called after her name. That's the key point. The month is called after her. What is the her? The moon. So guess what? January, February, March, April, May, June, they have no relation to the moon. So now that we understand that, let us go to the knowledge that Noah had, that even throughout the flood, he could know when was the beginning of the year. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and verse 14. It says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven. Lights. So when you step outside, what are the lights that you look at? The sun, the moon, and the constellations. Well, you know, things are advanced now. They have satellites up there, but it's not talking about that. Now it says to divide the day from the night, let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Now this is where it gets interesting, because a lot of people really do not know these things. Let me get this off. So you have the sun. What can you use the sun for? Day. Because the sun is what breaks dawn. So it's used for day. It is used for years, right? And it is used for season. When I say season, I'm talking about year tide. When the sun passes through these different constellations, that's when you get your winter, your summer, and so forth, right? So season here is year tide. Now, the moon and constellations, what do the moon and the constellations teach us? Nights, weeks, months, seasons, as in both appointments like feast days and also year tide. Because you need the sun passing through these constellations to give you year tide. So the sun alone cannot do it. The moon alone cannot do it. So people following lunar system, that's incorrect. Because you cannot use the moon to tell when the beginning of the day is. Just as you cannot use the sun to tell when the beginning of the night is. The day starts when the stars start to disappear. And there is a brighter light coming over the heavens. So the darkness is disappearing because the sun is breaking up the darkness. That's why you call it the break of dawn. Right? The night starts when the day ends. So when the constellations are appearing and doing their office, That's when, so not sunset, but when the moon, the stars coming out and they start to do their office, you're ushering in the night. So a day starts when the night ends, a night starts when the day ends, right? So there's no such thing as 24-hour day, right? So now that we understand the sun and the moon, let us go to Exodus chapter 34 and verse 18. No, verse 22. It says, "And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end." Now, what feast is the feast of ingathering? 3 times a year we should go to Jerusalem: the Passover, the Pentecost, and the Tabernacles, right? So the ingathering, the Tabernacles take place in the seventh month. Now, the sun, it goes through the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. You have 6 moons here, right? And you have another 6 moons here. So once it completes the sixth, the seventh would be the ending of a revolution. So in the 6th moon, that's when the sun is at the peak in the northern sky. Once it reaches that peak, it starts to do what? Descend. So it comes back around. So the 6th moon and the 7th moon, the time period is still going to be the same. It's going to be late evening still. The daylight period is still longer at that time. So it's the end of one revolution, meaning the sun reaches the north, the most northern part of the east. So it's northeast. It rises northeast, it sets northwest, right? When it reaches there, it stops. Not stop moving, but it stops going north. And then it goes back the opposite direction. This is why it says the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Not the end of 12 months, but the end of the revolution. Remember, it talks about the sun going around its course? Yes, it's the end of one revolution. And it's going to go into the next revolution. So this time it's going to go southwards. And you're going to go into the shorter days, shorter periods of daylight when it's on the south of the east. So the marking of the new year, it was the sun, the moon, and the stars that were appointed for that, not the vegetation. And this was a problem that they had in Egypt because, in Egypt, why they worship the waters and the rivers and all of that, right? Because at a certain time when the water season come, it will overflow the banks, and that's when they get to do their agricultural stuff, going back into the same vegetation. That is not consistent. Like I said, what happens when there is drought? Whether the water comes or not, the spring is in the earth. You can know that from the moon, but you'll have to be into this agricultural stuff to understand what happens with the moon and the earth. Why do you wait on a certain moon to cut your crops? When you want medicines out of plants, why do you wait at a certain time to cut it? Because of the moisture, right? So I hope this gives clarity that vegetation is not something consistent to say you're going to use as the marking of a new year. And the next thing is that for you to be conscious that you don't know what you call abib as an object. You cannot point at something and say that is abib. The only thing you can do is say, oh, it's March or April. But you cannot use March or April and point at something to say that is March over there, that is April. If you should erase your memory about the calendar system that you learned in school. You would have no clue when is March and when is April. So I hope this gives some clarity that the marking of the new year is the sun, the moon, and the constellations. And this is why we use a solar lunar calendar. Shalom.